Hi everyone, it's Wednesday in Cairns and a nice day, average temperature, a little bit of sun, a little bit of cloud, but nothing too bad. It'll probably be windy out and I don't know if I'll do some GoPro stuff. Actually I better charge up my GoPro before I forget. I've had it for years and the battery doesn't last that long, so I have to do it each time. But anyway, we've got a heap of stuff to get through today, so I haven't got time to have a chit chat. Better get straight into the news because it is absolutely packed full of news today, and I've had to cull out a few stories. It's just been that much stuff that I've chosen today. So, all right, we'll start from the beginning. This is an article from the Herald Sun, and is this the beginning of the demise of dictator Dan? Despot Dan's Belt and Road Agreement is facing widespread opposition according to a series of new opinion polls, with Labor support very soft. I actually grabbed one of these opinion polls. I couldn't get it from the Poll Bludger, but I did get one from IPA, which is a right-wing think tank in Victoria, in Melbourne. So these are the figures up on screen. You can check them out, and you can see that there's quite a bit of opposition to the Belt and Road. It's definitely an electoral loser for Dan. So he is in a bit of strife, I think, on a number of accounts. So we'll just see what's going on there. I think that's one of the most negative things. But Victorian electors, I've got no idea what they're going to do. Anyway, the next story is actually from news.com.au. And experts say there's little hope for a quick return to normal life in Australia. Well, I guess that's obvious to everybody the way things have been going. It's unfortunate, but I was hoping that this little dip would only last about 3 to 6 months, but the way governments have handled it, especially state governments like little fiefdoms, have actually really made things much worse. And I think Morrison's been overly slack in not pulling these states into line and turning this back into a country called Australia, because at the moment it doesn't feel like Australia. It feels like a number of colonies. Anyway, University of Melbourne epidemiologist Tony Blakely said eliminating coronavirus was too hard to achieve and the crisis was not yet over, not until we see the arse end of Dan, I would say. But that's a reasonably sensible comment from an academic, and they're like there's rare as hen's teeth at times. Decent comments from academics. South Korea is now having a spike in cases after a tight suppression. Indicates to me that you can't kill corona, you can just manage it. I think that's just common sense. Anyone who thinks they can just get rid of this virus, I mean, they're kidding themselves. And that was Jacinda Ardern over in New Zealand. She had a huge amount of hubris, thought, oh, we've really got it kicked, we've got it beaten. And of course, it'll come out of nowhere and just bite you in the arse. And she's got a big equine arse to be bitten too, so horse flies all over her. This epidemiologist, he cites France, Spain and the UK as countries with loose suppression as opposed to hard-ass suppression in Australia. Well, that's my definition. He called it tight suppression. I find the ratings of government corona response by countries very surprising. Aussies seem far too trusting for their own good, in my opinion. Frightening how easily led they are. This is the chart I've got up there on screen right now, just showing the level of trust. And Australia's right up the top of the list. I'm absolutely staggered at that. UK and US is right down the bottom, so that's interesting. Frightening how easily led Aussies are. Maybe our subpar scare the crap out of the populist media has a lot to do with this, because we do have a pretty poor mass media, and I think that they've done a great job of scaring Australians witless with this corona thing. Tony Blakely seems quite impressed with South Korea's response to corona, where they really look after people rather than just using enforcement. Note to Dan. Effective testing and contact tracing worked well over there. I don't agree with him about the vaccine though. There's no guarantees at this stage. Why can't we fill the MCG if we have low-list patrons inside the ground? I mean, he's saying that you can't have a full MCG, for instance. Well, I disagree with that. I think if the people that are allowed to go in are young and healthy, why not? I mean, this is just ridiculous. Tony Blakely goes on to admit that vaccines aren't a silver bullet and they're not 100% effective, but it's better than nothing, I guess. And you obviously got to have a pretty well 100% take-up to make it effective. I personally think we should protect the vulnerable and allow the fit and healthy to get back to work ASAP. That's my opinion anyway. Now, Daily Mail has got an interesting article here from a blast from the past by the name of Tony Abbott. He chimes in with a scathing attack on dictator Dan, there's no surprise there, says lockdowns and travel bans should be scrapped. He argues economic devastation isn't proportionate to health risks of virus. I'd have to agree with that. Abbott went on to accuse Andrews of wanting to extend a health dictatorship. He wants international borders reopened by Christmas, and I think that sounds very sensible. But unfortunately, now timid Mr. Morrison is looking more like just wanting to have borders open domestically by Christmas. I think that's very, very timid. I think we should be looking wider than that. There's Aussies. There was I saw a video today on YouTube where a lot of Aussies just can't even leave the country. They're not even given permission to go out of the country. I would have thought they'd let Aussies go out if they're prepared to pay for their own quarantine when they come back. I don't see why they should stop Australians going overseas if the other country is prepared to take them. I think that's ridiculous, but apparently that's the way it is at the moment. It's almost impossible to get out of this country, and that's a worry. From a health perspective, the pandemic has been serious. From an economic perspective, it has been disastrous. But I suspect from an overall well-being perspective, it will turn out worst of all. And I tend to think that Tony Abbott's spot on with that assessment. He cites some tough triage type figures, re the gains from money spent so far, and it looks as though money could have been spent way more efficiently. He goes into pretty basic figures on deaths and what have you, and you know, like medicos would have to do, he's crunching the numbers on the effectiveness of treatments and what have you, and he does seem to see it's wanting. He went on to praise the Swedish for their health economics approach to the pandemic. Most countries approach the crisis like trauma doctors, not economists. I got to say I'm on the same page there, because the effects of destroying the economy, I keep saying it, are much greater casualties from that than any pandemic like this. This is not the Spanish flu, which was devastating. It's not the Black Plague, which was devastating. It is a viral flu. It's a flu we need to take note of and minimise exposure, but it's not one of those huge pandemics. So let's get things in perspective. Abbott warned against having a stop-start life as the next wave of infections rose. Concerned governments were too heavily relying on health experts with no real accountability, and blamed authority figures for panicking. Homeowners could be forced to sell up as house prices plunged for 5 straight months in Melbourne. No great surprise there with the Victorian economy tanking. Of course, you'd expect that. 6-month mortgage repayment holidays, $1,500 JobKeeper ending this month. Median prices may have fallen 1.4% in the latest month, but it is winter after all, which is traditionally a soft season for real estate. If the trend continues though in spring, then we can push the real estate panic button, I think. My bet is that prices will continue to drop and business flees from the state as bankruptcies mount. I'm not surprised there's going to be a push to move to rural centres from the big smoke. I mean, I've done it myself. I did it 4 years ago, and it was partially a financial decision, but mainly because of the weather. Cheaper and safer option, especially if you're capable of working from home in a remote location. As I say, I really feel vindicated making my particular move up here, especially way up north, where masks are only worn by villains on TV, which is a nice change, rather than everyone in the street. You just rarely see a mask up here. Here's one. This is good. Now we move on to our friends in in communist China. Beijing's chilling threat, CCP-run state media says Australia will become the poor white trash of Asia if it doesn't welcome the rise of China. Way to go to win Aussie over Beijing propaganda machine. Looks like their journalists are even more inept than ours. It's, I don't know who they think they're going to win over with this sort of rhetoric. It's just ridiculous. Australia could become impoverished unless it welcomes Chinese investment. I think these guys should be writing comedy routines. No one's going to buy this crap. Your credibility of Chinese at the moment is virtually zero. They've really trashed their credibility. Of course, the Belt and Road scheme has been such a blessing to all the countries that embraced it, selling their soul to be strangled by the Chinese debt. Yeah, can we have some more of that, please? I know Dan probably like it. We're not all desperate imbeciles like Daniel Andrews, however. I love the picture of the skirted army in this particular article. It says it all about China's faux military might. And I really do think it's a faux military might. I think there's been a lot of posturing by the Chinese about how strong they are militarily, and I think they're actually very afraid to get involved in a conflict and be found out. Decoupling from China will not send China back to poverty. Oh, really? What if we stopped our iron ore exports and redirected them to, say, India? What are you going to produce your steel from pots and pans like during the Mao era when he tried that tactic in the disastrous Cultural Revolution? China is totally scared and panicking. Read between the lines is my suggestion. Australia should abandon its Cold War mentality and conform to the spirit of world peace, like the way Beijing has been acting. That's what they actually said in this article. Yeah, real world peace, like threatening all its neighbours with land grabs, military exercises and bloody skirmishes with India over disputed territories. Don't make me laugh. Well, you have made me laugh. The Chinese hate the fact that we are now blocking investments in our own country's interests. Tough titties, China. We're not playing softball with you any longer. People have been really sucking up to China the last few years, but they've totally blown that goodwill. While our masks go on, yours have slipped off, and we don't like what we see. Chinese people felt deeply betrayed by Mr. Morrison's call for independent scientists to enter China and investigate coronavirus. Oh, diddums. Chinese apparatchiks don't want proper scrutiny of their dodgy practices. That's pretty obvious. Much better to have the corrupt HWO do the job the way the Chinese want it done, with zero transparency. And now for some good news. I mean, it's been pretty dour, hasn't it? So the good news is Elon Musk overtakes Mark Zuckerberg to become the world's third richest person with a wealth of 115.4 billion after Tesla shares surged 500%. Only two scumbags are now ahead of him, Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, neither of which I'd want to have a beer with. Musk, on the other hand, I could get totally wasted with, talking about all the visionary projects he has on now and what's on drawing boards for the future. He will go down in history as the 21st century Edison and Henry Ford rolled into one, in my opinion. And I thought Tesla shares were a bit pricey last year. I think they were about $145 US. Mind you, I saw their potential, but made the fatal investor mistake. And the fatal investor mistake is I knew they had a bright future. I'd done all the research, but I failed to purchase any shares. Kicking myself big time now. I've been following Tesla's progress and knew they were up to a decade ahead with battery technique, but failed to act. If SpaceX had gone public, I would have jumped on that IPO, which is an initial public offering. But unfortunately, SpaceX, which I've got a lot of time for, they are a private company, so you can't buy into them. I think some investors have. I think they might have been invited to, not for the general public anyway. And finally, back to some bad news, I'm afraid. Victoria's state of emergency is extended by 6 months as Dictator Dan's controversial bill passes by just one vote cast by a Green MP in the upper house who returned from maternity leave for the marathon parliamentary session. Trust agreeing to say okay to an extension of the draconian emergency misery. She has a guaranteed income while businesses go to the wall. No wonder she's laughing. Hope she enjoys her middle-class maternity leave welfare paid by taxpayers. Any wonder MPs haven't a clue about the real world. They really do live in a bubble. And just finally, fears big business will abandon Victoria. Uncertainty about Victoria's roadmap to recovery and fears of future lockdowns could force businesses to move interstate, and the state could lose tens of millions of dollars as a consequence. It's not looking too good for Victoria, I've got to tell you. And I just, if they could just get rid of Dan, maybe there'd be some light at the end of the tunnel. But while he's in power, he just gets off on it. He loves having to control his populace, and it's a really sad thing. Other sad thing is that Sam Newman, who was pushing forward this $250,000 march, he's now backtracked on that. So I haven't got time to go into that today, but I have got a story about that as well. He makes some good comments, but it is just disappointing. Mind you, I think 250,000 was a bit of an ambit claim for a march. I think that would have been way under that, and it wouldn't have made him look that good. So it may be a good thing he's pulling back from that, but I don't think he's given up on pushing this cause. But I think a few demos wouldn't be a bad idea in Victoria, even though I'm against them when it comes to the coronavirus. I think it's got to a stage where in Victoria there's nothing to be lost from it now. I think there's the way that state's being run, they need some real activists in the streets to try to get things moving. I wouldn't normally say that. I'm very much like up here in Queensland. I like to have a bit of law and order. I think we need better policing, for instance. So I'm not an anarchist. I'm a libertarian. I'm not against policing, but I am against the way the policing's been done in Victoria. I think it's been very heavy-handed, and that deputy police commissioner, what was his name, Cornelius, he's a worry in my opinion. Anyway, that's it for today. It's I'll get a bit of moisture on the chin here. Okay. Anyway, that's it for me. And as usual, I'd like to thank everybody for supporting the channel. As the views are steady, I should say, and the subs are continuing to. They're hovering around the 509 mark. I can't see that a crack beyond that. So always could do with more subscriptions, but at least I'm getting a bit of traffic, and that's good. So really appreciate that, and of course feel free to comment, give those thumbs ups and thumbs downs, and most comments have been great, really good. A lot of supportive comments and intelligent comments that don't necessarily agree with what I say, but that's fine. I'm not the font of all knowledge. I keep repeating that. This is just my opinions. I think I have a fairly sensible approach to how this is all going. I'm trying to do a cost-benefit analysis in my own head about the pros and cons of shutdowns, and I seriously do err on the side of the people who want more economic freedom. I think that is definitely the best thing for everybody. We all want the best for people in our community, I guess, and personally I see it that way. But I know there's a lot of people, especially in the medical profession, who are very conservative and they want these lockdowns. And I was listening to a couple of ladies in a waiting room on Monday, and they were pretty conservative when it came to all this, and they thought Anastasia was doing a great job. Well, I'm not a fan of Anastasia. I think I'm hoping her time is numbered, even if we can't get rid of Dan. But fingers crossed. I just don't know what's going to happen. Oh, well, I've got to do a video on our absentee opposition leader, Deb Frecklington. God, she's the invisible woman. You just never hear from her. But anyway, look, I hope you guys have a good day. It's nice here. I've got to go out in a little while, and I'll try to get this video edited for you, and should be ready around probably about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So look out for it.